We move on now to Dr. Andrew Cunningham, who's going to talk to us about turning up the resistance and becoming constellation builders. What a great title, Andrew. Thank you. Designing educational responses in times of disengagement and uncertainty. So Andrew is the global leader for education at the Aga Khan Foundation. Awesome job title, sir. Former UNICEF, World Bank and co-founder of WISER in Kenya, Oxford doctor, doctorate from Oxford and GPE Global Board member. That's an impressive CV, Andrew, it really is. Delighted to hand over to you now.
Thanks so much, Miles, and just checking that you can see me, hear me, and also see the screen.
Yes, all of this is working well for us, or at least for me, I think for us.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Miles, and thanks to Sophia for the invitation. I think the most important part about my biography is I'm a trained fifth grade teacher, so nothing else matters going into this. And I'm going to just really do something I've never done. I've never given this type of presentation. I'm really going off script and I'm trying something new. And I'm inspired by the topic and particularly inputs from Miyako and Jennifer previously. So I'm going to buzz through 3 sections and really dissect this title. Turning up the resistance, becoming constellation builders, and then designing new educational responses in times of uncertainty. Now, for those of you who know spinning, you've been in some of these gym classes, and you are often intimidated by people who look like this and also can ride quite fast. Good to know there's also people like me, who also do it for fun, who also depend on instructors like the one to my left in the picture. But when you're focusing on the class, you're focusing on the challenge here by Mark Penna on Escheron of what's your output? What's your output? And many times we're focusing just on our cadence. If you've ever been in one of these spin classes, everyone's going really fast and it looks like we're making progress. But in fact, the hardest thing to do is to turn up your resistance. It's harder, it's less fun, but that equals a greater output. So a challenge to us in this conference is, are we all turning up our resistance levels and doing what's hard? Or are we satisfied with the cadence of continuing to spin in the current cycles and the current speeds? The second is, how do we think about becoming constellation builders? When we look up into the sky, it's tremendous. And yet we also need guidance. Particularly throughout the centuries, how do we use the stars moving forward? And I didn't know that there's only 88 constellations. That's pretty tremendous, considering how many different times in history constellations have made the guidance and made the difference of how we move forward. Now, when you look up, you'll still see this. But if you make a constellation like this of Cygnus, which is my favorite one, you actually begin to tell a story, engage in history, engage in relevance. It's a swan flying through the air. And so a challenge to us also thinking through this topic is, are we all stargazing? Or maybe even like navel gazing? I mean, a lot of us just want to make sure that we are the brightest star. Or are we actually engaging in the pretty difficult but pretty long-standing history of constellation building? And how might that introduce a new approach for teaching and learning? Okay, that's nice to say, Andy. Now let's see your part 3. How do you actually design new educational responses? And try to answer this conference theme of how to bridge this disconnect in redesigning curriculum and methods to reignite student passion. So again, I'm doing something I've never done. Let me try to walk this talk. And let me try to take this idea of resistance, constellation making, and take what I have seen and read in preparation for this particular presentation, the 5 stars that I think might make a new constellation for bridging this disconnect. And I wanted to share a couple of the highlights, or at least the shiny parts of each one of these stars, and then try to bring that together as a new constellation. Now, many of you who are astrologists will say, but Andy, this already is a new constellation, and it is. This is an old constellation. This is a picture of Cassiopeia, and it is recognized actually as the 5 brightest stars. So forgive me, I am sort of reinterpreting another 5-star constellation. So first is the Disengaged Teen by Jenny Anderson and Rebecca Winthrop. And they propose a new way of understanding modes of engagement. So in this conference, we're talking about how do we reignite passionate students? And in fact, I really have enjoyed their description of students across these 4 levels of engagement. In terms of a resistor, students who display overt disengagement, acting out, withdrawing because of feelings of invisibility and inadequacy. The passenger students who are coasting along, doing the minimum, often disconnected from the why behind school. The achiever may appear engaged because of grades and results, but their engagement is externally driven, which can hide underlying disengagement and mental health risks. And then finally, pushing our aspirations to working with students to become explorers. This internally motivated, curious, engaged in what they're learning because it matters to them. And this particular area is central to our approach of shifting from do this because I said so to here's why this matters and how you might engage. And why this matters is that it's not just about making them try harder. It's involving the acknowledgement of emotional health, identity, meaningful relationships, and helping young children and teenagers see themselves as learners, not just grade machines. And so thinking about our previous definitions of engagement, of what students do, feel, think, what about student agency? And really thinking about what they initiate. So that's star number 1. Now, star number 2, Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule. What's a method that can just get this started, Andy? And I love it. She describes in her book the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And if you have an instinct to act on a goal, you must physically move within 5 seconds or your brain will kill them. Now, this might sound like a 5th grade classroom management tool that we might use, but in fact, it has been proven over and over and over again that so many times we think of confidence as a trait rather than a skill. And so how do you practice confidence? By, if you want to actually go for a run, the first action in 5 seconds means putting on your shoes, Mel says. And when you put on your shoes, then your action is already making progress and confidence to start running. This is truly an interruption to the autopilot and the hesitation that we see across schools and classrooms. And it brings that particular small habit in a universal way, both for teachers, both for students, both for families. Get out of bed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up. And she starts with that as her personal story of really fighting depression and struggle, of just getting out of bed and then doing that over and over again. Now, a 3rd star is the TED Talks. And I find that Chris Anderson really brings this idea of how might we become better idea builders. And we're thinking about curriculum. How are we actually encouraging moments where we are encouraging students to develop ideas and then share them in a way that they are a mental construct that listeners or others can hold on to, walk away with, value, and in some sense be changed by? And he notes that on the stage, the best talks feel like generosity, not performance. And so a question to us is, what is your gift that you want to give others? And in an age of AI, of doing maybe a 5-second prompt on ChatGPT, you're not going to have a ChatGPT on stage trying to give a gift or also trying to convey an idea. Perhaps turn up the resistance, perhaps constellation making. Hopefully those are 2 new ideas that you can walk away with. And then 4th is the let them theory, again by Mel Robbins, of accepting and allowing people's choices and being comfortable with that, of let them, but then also let me. Take responsibility of how I can respond and how I can protect my peace. This might sound like a really basic phrase, but going through numbers and going through trends of student and teacher stress, that simple phrase of let them in order to let me take my power back. And to also acknowledge that other people hold no real power over you unless you give it. In terms of a curriculum and a method, this, I believe, has already reignited a number of different passionate students and learners, including me. And if you mix that 5-second rule and the let them theory, you have a new mindset loop of moving and staying grounded, of being assertive, but also having acceptance. And then the final star is Schools 2030. And this work is across 10 countries, Asia, Africa, so not Asia and Africa aren't countries, but Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Portugal, and India. And they're looking with this one key question: how do we work more with teachers as our R&D partners of choice? So how do we look at it as a movement of catalyzing teacher-led innovation, a mantra of how teachers are the world's best design thinkers, and a mentality that teachers could be the R&D partners of choice for challenges in AI, climate, learning differences, and the ever-emerging and ever-evolving needs of society? And if you go into schools2030.org, it's a first attempt that I've seen across so many contexts of how do we create educational resources that are as memorable and usable as the last 4 airport self-help books that you see on the shelves. We have an opportunity to make more open source, tested, endorsed, trusted, innovative, useful, but meaningful ways to engage, and the practicality at the front. So in conclusion, hopefully the resistance, the constellation making, and my first attempt has created one new constellation. I'm calling it Bridgie, of bridging the disconnect, but also turning it over to my colleagues and friends that are part of this agenda. It's your turn. Do you turn up your resistance? What new constellation will you build? And could that be a new constellation of Bridge the Gap 2025, that we look up to the sky and actually get some guidance to navigate the uncertainties ahead? Thanks so much, Miles. Back over to you.
Dr. Cunningham, thank you so much. One of the problems with doing these webinars is nobody ever gives you a round of applause, but that definitely deserved one. Awesome talk. Thank you very much. So this link between agency and engagement seems really clear in what you've just been talking about. Is your feeling that those jurisdictions where we have got a sense of school belonging and engagement have got that right, do give their kids more agency in the classroom?
It's an extraordinary time, particularly across low resource settings. This has been the reality for a very long time, and actually tapping into the wisdom of teachers and figuring out how to actually understand what works in their context for their students and at their time is a simple, humble question of another sort of airport book of the how do you live an unstressable life? It's the 3 L's. It's limit, learn, and listen. So perhaps limit the actors in the discussions on what works in schools, maybe a little bit more to the teachers and parents and students, but also simply have that curiosity to learn and listen. And we've seen that across many of the countries that we have the privilege of working in. And really, it's an astounding challenge for all of us, because the positive deviance and also the valuable wisdom is already in the classrooms and communities. We simply have to amplify and understand and share.
Thank you very much. Your 5th grade teacher skills of taking big complex ideas and presenting them so clearly really to the fore this afternoon. Hugely appreciated.